So that's really transformative and would really make a huge difference. And of course, we're working with others. In terms of innovative financing, we're working with IFC to put in place this transmission infrastructure finance facility, which is really the blended finance idea of bringing concessional resources to help address some of the issues around high risk and the cost of transmission infrastructure for the private sector, so that you incentivize the private sector to come in and do some of what it needs. I think at the center of this is really looking at transmission as something that the private sector can do. In the past, we've always looked at this as public sector. But part of the innovations is really coming in and supporting private sector to do more, and there is scope for that to happen. So let me close again by stressing the partnerships. The partnerships between, of course, the public and the private philanthropies, but importantly, the partnerships between the MDBs. And we're working closely with the AFDB in Mission 300, and we'll look forward to doing some more to make sure that we can seize the opportunity of market integration to achieve the bold ambition of Mission 300. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Victoria.
Thank you.
Being an electrical engineer, I can actually see electrons flowing from Ethiopia to Kenya through the Kenya-Ethiopia interconnector, to Tanzania through the Kenya-Tanzania interconnector, from Tanzania to Zambia through the Zambia-Tanzania interconnector, and to the Southern African power pool. I think this is what we are. This is the essence of the Africa Continental Power Master Plan, and I think the infrastructure is going to be in place and result in actual trade throughout the continent. So I think finally, Mr. Francesco La Camera, who is the Director General of the International Renewable Energy Agency, I have one question for you. How can frameworks like the Africa Continental Master Plan and the Africa Single Electricity Market act as catalysts for achieving the goals of Mission 300, and how is IRENA supporting these efforts?
So thank you, Kevin, for your question, and also for having IRENA here in Dar es Salaam. You know that, first of all, I like to commend the African Development Bank, the World Bank, for the 300 million initiative, and try to put the contribution of IRENA in the context that I'm presenting briefly. So first of all, we have to understand why Africa has been kept out in some way from the energy transition and the strong development of renewables around the world. We know that really a minimum part of investment in renewables has been made in the continent. The continent that has potential to provide 1,000 times the electricity needed by the world. In our point of view, there are three structural barriers that are slowing the progress of renewables and the energy transition in Africa. The first one is the lack of infrastructure. We are complaining that the cost of capital is very high. Sometimes I always like to repeat that the cost of capital is not the illness, but it's just the symptom. So the fact that it is so difficult to invest in Africa in electricity. And why? Because there is a structural lack of infrastructure. What I'm trying repeating now from a few years, that when the process of reform of the multilateral financial institutions, the question is not only to have more inclusive decision-making processes or provide for having more loans or grants. The problem is for what? In my point of view, the multilateral financial institutions should be focused on the building on the infrastructure that is needed to support the new energy system that is coming. This must be the focus of the multilateral financial institutions. Also they have not the capacity, the financial capacity for doing that. But if there is a clear plan on what they intend to do in Africa, it will be much easier to associate the private capital and leveraging and work on the basis of partnership. So the best thing, my point of view, is infrastructure and as a principal focus of the multilateral financial institutions. And then we go to the second barrier that we see, the lack of the market that is designed for having more renewables. And if you don't have a single power market, how this could happen? It will not happen. So first, infrastructure. Second, work on policies and legal environment that allow the market of electrons works. Third is that a distributive energy system is much more resilient, based on renewables, is clean, and provide 3 times jobs that usual investment in fossil fuel on others. But the fact is that it could be also more difficult to manage that essentialized energy system based on fossil fuel. So we need to have institutions that are ready to manage this kind of system. We need professionals that are fitting with the needs of the new energy system. So these are the 3 main barriers. And so this is the reason the 300 million initiative is fitting well and what we are doing. So the fact that IRENA has been proud partners of the building of the Continental Masterplan, we have provided with the atomic energy the modeling for that. I think this is a very significant step in this direction, as has been important in our point of view. Without NEPAD, all the training activity they are performing to make the institution able to manage what is coming and sort of to be leading on that. So this, we think, is important, the Mission 300, because it's fitting exactly in this context that we wish to guide. And what IRENA can do more on that. You know that following the Africa Summit in Nairobi in September 2023, we have launched the Accelerated Partnership for Africa. That is working well. We have, under the leadership of Germany, Denmark, the UAE, and the US, and the leadership of 11 countries that today are part of APRA, and we will be 15 before the summer. I think this could be trying to connect with the compact exercise, because we have seen in our investing forum in Nairobi how this is working well. Now we have pipeline of projects. We are trying to make this project to be bankable. So there is a kind of a good line of work. And we also put in this our ETAF, our financial platform that has now 14 partners, including Africa 50, including the World Bank, including with the IFC and MIGA. I think this could be another instrument. So please, present project to ARENA. We will try to work with you to assess, prepare the document for the bankability, assess the bankability, and going forward. And just to say them, in closing, how good has been the APRA initiative, that we are trying to showcase that. So we have launched with, in Azerbaijan, in Baku, an initiative, similar initiative for Central Asia. We will launch it at the end of this year, another initiative for Southeast Asia, but trying to remain to Africa. So first, infrastructure, crucial role of the multilateral financial institutions, and all are we ready to work together for making this initiative to be a success. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So I think we are coming to the end of the panel session, but I'll still ask just one generic question for all of you, and in particular for Victoria and Joseph and maybe Kamugisha, because we are partners in the Mission 300. So if you look at your crystal ball and envision this Africa Continental Power Master Plan has been developed, fully developed, and throughout the NEPAD and other partners, we have been able to build this infrastructure that facilitates this market trade. What is your vision? especially with regard to Mission 300. Let's start with you, Joseph, then Victoria, and then to come to you. 1 minute each, please.
Thank you, Kevin, and it's a very interesting question. I will answer it by quoting the Minister of Power from Nigeria, who in a panel somewhere in Barcelona said, if Kenya's peak demand is 4 hours ahead of Nigeria, and we each have 4 hours of peak demand, why are we both building peaking plants? Why can't we leverage each other's infrastructure to finance, to actually use the power more efficiently? That can only happen if you have a continental master plan and you have the infrastructure such that the peaking plants in Nairobi are available when Nigeria needs them. So my vision is we have the infrastructure, physical, in existence, and I'm delighted that we're now moving towards private sector investment in this infrastructure, but also the trading mechanism to optimize for every country's needs so that we get the cheapest electron, we maximize the capital asset utilization towards a more competitive electricity market. Our continent will only develop if we have affordable power, and this is one key part of that.
Thank you. Victoria?
Thank you. Look, I mean, first of all, if it's been achieved, that's super exciting, and it makes everything much easier. What I would like to see is essentially a point that the minister from Nigeria raised this morning, that he's trading and not getting paid. You know, so how do we make sure that there are good rules of the game that encourage countries to trade? And nobody's saying, well, I can't get paid if I put my power out and I give it. And you have a situation where sometimes countries can be exporters. Sometimes they can be importers, you know, depending on what their countries are going through, climate factors and so on. And so everybody benefits. And together we're pulling the continent forward. We're providing the access to individual households. And we're also powering our economies to pull this continent out of poverty and into prosperity.
Thank you very much, Victoria. I think Amin, very quickly, and finally Kazaura.
Thank you very much, VP Kevin. For ODANEPAT, first I would like to reemphasize that we consider M300 as a step toward the achievement of the objectives of the CMP AFSEM, multiplied by 5 our power generation capacity, and ensure universal access by 2040, with commitment toward just and equitable transition. That's number one. Number two, of course, as an organization, we are going to continue to contribute to it by making sure that our member states have really the capacity, and that's the reason why, and it was reminded by the DG of Nyerere, why we are also investing very much into early project preparation, because early project preparation is the best tool, instrument to make sure that we de-risk projects so that we can actually really go toward that. And then thirdly, our vision, of course, is to make sure that those who can produce the cheapest and in a stable manner would actually contribute to give access to those who cannot produce. That's the reason why we are promoting AFSEM. So all in all, for us, M300 is a step, and a strong, solid step toward the realization of CMP AFSEM by 2040. Thank you.
Thank you, Kazaura, but also address Agenda 63, how this Mission 300 fits into your Agenda 63, and we'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I can think two quick things. One, what we envisage in 2040, once the AFSEM, CMP, the M300, and all the other continental initiatives are in place, that first thing, that we'll have electricity tariffs which are affordable throughout the continent, not the mismatch of tariffs we have, you know, if you go to south, north, east, or west of the continent or central. The second aspect is we will have increased generation of renewables in our energy mix, and further, the continent further continues to be the lowest contributor to greenhouse gases emission in the world. So these are the two aspects which I can quickly envisage to see will happen in the next 15 years once we have AFSEM, CMP, M300, and all the other initiatives we have fully operational. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think you'll all agree that we've had a very invigorating and insightful panel. Please join me in giving them a very hearty round of applause.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's do the exact same for Dr. Kevin Kariuki for an excellent job of moderating. Thank you very much, sir. Might I invite all of you for a photo opportunity, if I can invite you just to step forward, and the official photographers to please come and facilitate the photo opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, if I might have your attention while that photo opportunity is underway, to explain the final part of our program for this afternoon. We are now going to transition into a short series of really brisk and really concise conversations. We're going to be calling up onto the stage the moderator and their panelists. In most instances, 2 or 3 panelists at the very most. And the view here is to really shine the spotlight on some of the challenges and opportunities in the sector. Before I call up our first of these sessions, let's please give our panel a final round of applause as they descend stage. Thank you very much. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Madam, thank you very much. Standing by now, ladies and gentlemen, to speak to the question of off-grid and the productive use of energy, it's my pleasure to invite in the role of moderator, Manoj Sinha, the co-founder and CEO of Husk Power Systems. And as Manoj comes up, thank you, Manoj, please let me also call on Clemens Callis, the CEO of Signum Capital, as well as Matthias Charles Yabe, the CEO of AcoFresh. Let's give them a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, please. Thank you very much.
Just so you know, I'm taking my CEO's place, William Brent. Just so you know.
And you're taking this? Okay, William Brent. Okay. Just a quick, a small deviation. William Brandt is standing in for his CEO, Manoj Sinha, and will therefore take on the role of moderating this session. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, inviting you to lean in to engage. These sessions are going to be fast-paced and short, and so we're looking forward to your attention and your participation. Over to you, William.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here. As mentioned, this is going to hopefully be a fast-paced discussion. I am not going to stand at the podium, but sit here with the other panelists. We have an interesting mix of people here. We have a very early-stage company working in Ghana and looking to expand into additional countries in Africa, doing cold storage and e-mobility. AcoFresh, and we also have one of the leading debt providers in our space, Signum Capital, Clemens Callis, as mentioned, and I'm William Brent, the Chief Marketing Officer at Husk Power. We're a growth stage mini-grid developer, so it's a little bit of an interesting combination on both on the practitioner side, but also on the finance side. So I think I'd like to kick off this conversation. You know, there's been a lot of discussion around productive use, so-called productive use, but I think that it's a very amorphous term that people often interpret in very different ways. So I thought I'd begin by asking Matthias and Clemens, you know, sort of how you define productive use. What is productive use to you?
Hi. So for me, I think productive use of energy has to do with making use of different energy sources to ensure that it creates economic value, in that it's able to help create job opportunities and then improve livelihoods of people.
Clemens?
Okay, so I struggle with this term as much as probably many of you, and in some way as a provider of capital, to me, that term doesn't really capture what the essence is of what we're trying to do. I mean, ultimately, we're in the business of supporting new companies in developing and implementing new business models. And as providers of credit, i.e. lenders, we need to make sure that the money comes back to our investors with a certain return. Now, ultimately, in the broader DRE space that we're looking at, what we're looking for is businesses that deliver ultimately green electrons and use those for different purposes, some of which maybe what traditionally is defined as productive use, which could be solar pumps and other machinery. But in the end, what we are looking for is business models that can catalyze the use of electricity. And we're not so much hung up about whether it's called productive use or not. We want to see businesses that grow, and with that growth, the electricity consumption will ultimately go up, which is what drives businesses, their performance, their profitability, and ultimately allows us to earn a return.
Yeah, it's interesting because, as a mini-grid developer, everything we do is we would consider productive use, right? We are electrifying communities. We're doing appliance sales and credit financing to allow for both households and commercial users to actually take advantage of the electricity for productive purposes, but we wouldn't call it productive use. It's just part of our business. It's a utility business model with services added on that allow for greater economic activity, job creation, business creation. So, for us, when that term became more current in the discussion, we looked at it and said, well, this is what we've been doing for 16 years. So it's a little bit of a difficult concept for a mini-grid developer to get their head around, just because it's built into what we do from the very beginning. So we're a utility. So go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe to put this in context of how, as a financier, we approach this. I mean, Matthias, William and I sat down beforehand and discussed a little bit about this very topic, and I was trying to learn about Matthias's business. He's a social enterprise that provides cold storage for farmers in rural locations that don't have access to cold storage, right? So clearly that's a productive use conversation, but my questions to him revolve around other topics. So I go and ask him, okay, Matthias, how long have you been in business, and how are you growing your business? What is it that's required to roll out your solution? So Matthias, maybe you can repeat a little bit what you do and what it takes to scale this business.
Right. So at AkuFresh, we are a social enterprise, youth-led, that is based in Ghana. And then our goal is to ensure that we are providing renewable energy solutions to help smallholder farmers improve their livelihoods and also ensure post-harvest management. And because currently about a third of all food produced every year is lost, and just in Africa, 40% of food produced do not get to consumers. And these are as a result of lack of technology and even energy at this local level. So by offering solar-powered cold storage preservation units, we are ensuring that farmers extend shelf life of crops from 5 days to 21 days. And we are doing this at the farm gate. So we offer a decentralized solar-powered storage unit, which will help smallholder farmers to store the crops at the farm gate, helping them extend the shelf life and look for market. That is the business model. Around it is the fact that we offer this as a service using the pay-as-you-go model, where farmers get to pay 30 cents for each 20 kg crate worth of fresh produce.
So Matthias, you mentioned that you've already pivoted your business model, from more of a services-oriented model to one that's more about build, own, and transfer to local farmer collectives that actually, pay for and then operate the asset. Why? Why did you make that pivot? What forced you to make that pivot? What were the decisions that were behind that pivot?
Right, that's a very good question. So, as a very early stage social enterprise, one challenge we faced, with even regards to speaking to investors, is that they do not really see economic growth because it costs a lot to set up our product, and organizations and banks who will now finance the product. So they buy the organizations and banks who will now finance the product. So they buy the product from our end, we manage it for 1 year and then train local community members to take ownership of it. And also looking at farmer cooperatives who will be able to also make an initial deposit of the, to own the storage unit, and then have a payment plan with support from local banks and other institutions to be able to help them manage it. With this, it is us that kind of burden of now going to look for money to set up the units and then scale.
So,
thank you.
So I'm going to jump in here because I think here we get to the real challenge of what we're all trying to address. I mean, clearly, providing cold storage, it has to be a good thing. Overall, there's no debate about it. Yeah, we manage both credit funds that can lend to a business like this, and we're also a manager of a venture fund that supports early stage businesses. So I turn around to Matthias and say, okay, yeah, we have a fund that can give you $5 million in loans to scale up your business, but in order to do that, we require a certain amount of equity, i.e. owner's capital in the deal. So I go to him and say, you come up with $2 million of equity, yeah, and then we can have a discussion about $5 million of debt. And then Matthias turns to me and says, this is great, but I mean, getting equity is really difficult, and we've started talking to a number of venture capital funds out there. Yeah. So then I change my hat, take off my credit hat, and put on my venture hat, and I said to him, okay, Matthias, so I'm on the investment committee of our venture fund. The first question I ask when I get presented a deal is how quickly can you grow, and what kind of multiple on my investment am I going to get? And I said to him, by the way, in this current environment, my fellow IC members are very wary of very asset-intensive business models that need, in addition to venture equity, need a whole bunch of credit. So then I turn back to Matthias and ask him what he's going to do. But maybe rather than ask him and put him on the spot, I'm going to turn to William, because he's gone through this process, and maybe he can give a little bit of better insights into how this process of starting a venture takes you on a road to ultimately having a functioning and profitable business, I hope.
So, well, let me ask you first. So, I mean, you, I believe, have a development mandate within your fund, correct, in Signum? Mm-hmm. So who defined for you, or did you find for yourself, this focus on asset-light versus asset-heavy business models? Because mini-grids are also an asset-heavy business. We struggle to raise equity and debt just like you do, Matthias. But I'm curious, if you don't mind, like, what is the development finance community, what's their thesis, and how did that come about? Is it the LPs who are driving that? Is it you that's driving that? Where does that point of view come from?
That's an excellent question, actually, because the investors in our venture fund are development finance institutions that would all subscribe to the developmental outcomes and the necessities of a business like Matthias's or mini-grids. At the same time, the venture model follows a very specific trajectory of generating returns for its investors. It relies on sort of relatively rapid growth. It also requires most companies to be able to transact outside of their home market, which typically is too small to gain, well, to allow them to gain the size that they can ultimately exit at the valuations that's required for a typical venture funded model. I think of it as a first stage investment, a seed investment followed by 2 or 3 rounds of capital. At each stage, the venture capital universe requires the valuation to go up by a factor of, I mean, name it, 3 to 5 times. So you quickly see that for a company to be successful, a venture investor needs to see being able to have a valuation of $100 million. I'm picking some relatively random numbers in orders of magnitude. Then I can look at, and so that's not necessarily imposed on us by the development community that funds us. It's the way the market works, because even development finance institutions want their money back, and in the venture world, that's the way to an exit.
Well, we could have a longer conversation about the development finance community and whether they're headed in the right direction, but we'll leave that aside for now. To answer your question, I mean, mini-grids, I think most mini-grid companies start in our industry by thinking just about supply. and thinking that if you can generate and sell electrons, that you'll be able to cover your costs and make a profit. In rural communities, peri-urban communities where there's relatively little economic activity, that's a non-starter. We learned that the hard way. We almost failed as a company. And what we came to realize was that unless you focus both on supply and demand, that you can't come to a profitable business model. And demand for me is essentially productive use, right? Whether it's household or business, if you can create that demand and actually allow for those communities to be productive, then you've solved a big part of your problem, is making sure that you're sweating that asset and using the electricity generation asset to its fullest as much as possible. So that was a really seminal moment for us in terms of realizing, okay, if you're going to do this, you have to look at both the generation side and the demand side and make sure that those two things are very much aligned.
Yeah. And maybe to pick up on what you said about the sort of the broader financial community, yeah, I guess the shortcomings that we are responsible for is that in order to balance supply and demands, there are enough factors outside of everybody's control. Yeah, we need to be able to provide some visibility on where the financing can come from.
Yeah.
And that is difficult, and we haven't done a good enough job. And I'm sure critical to yours and your success.
Matthias, we've talked about raising equity as being one challenge for you. What are the other major challenges that you face as a young startup?
Right. So some of the challenges have to be working with grassroots, people at the grassroots level, because sometimes it's a challenge for people at the grassroots to be able to adapt to modern technology. So you have to usually spend more time trying to educate and create awareness and also get people to buy into the idea, because you wouldn't want to develop a solution that will end up not being used. Of course, they face a problem, but then if you do not really offer that kind of awareness, it becomes difficult for them to accept the product. So that is usually a challenge that we face, because people usually at that level tend not to adapt easily to modern technology. So that is one challenge. And another challenge has to do with sourcing equipment, because it's usually expensive. I mean, as a mini-grid company, you understand that it's really huge investment, especially investing in renewable energy. So that high upfront cost, and even sourcing the materials and the materials not being available locally in that quantity is also a challenge. So we end up spending time looking for the equipment we need to put together our technology. That also becomes a challenge in terms of scaling.
But I want to ask you. So, what's the thing preventing you or presenting a challenge to you to invest more capital in this space? Because it's been identified as a market opportunity worth tens of billions of dollars, right? So that's a huge opportunity. Why not invest more?
So I was just about to ask you. Yeah. So we hear of all these challenges, and based on Husk, how long did it take you to get on top of these challenges and get to the stage where this business was per se on a stable ground?
Well, I think so the current version of the company is about 10 years old. It's taken us about 8 years to get there.
Okay, so that's part of your answer, right? We're looking at a lot of businesses like Matthias's, and we know that on average, in this ecosystem that we work in, companies take 8 to 10 years to reach profitability. So he tells me it's going to take him 3 years. Yeah, I add a little bit of fat to it because I know nothing ever works out the way it does. So I'm already having to plan for a business that needs continuously needs to access capital for the next 5 to 8 years. This is going to be through I don't know how many macro cycles in which investors come and go. Yeah, so that is my problem. I have not enough visibility on the future to know that if I put money in now, someone's going to come and follow in 3 years' time to take the business to the next level.
Yeah.
And I would like to hear your solution to that.
Yeah, no, so I mean, one of the things I was going to say, even for a growth stage company like us, we deploy our capital to build assets so that we can electrify people. If we're going to add any additional value-added services like productive use into what we do, we still need grant capital to de-risk those business models. And I would say, and Matthias, you disagree with me if you like, I haven't seen a whole lot of productive use business models that have scaled commercially. And, maybe e-mobility, maybe irrigation, but, we've tried cold storage, we've tried rice milling, we've tried e-mobility, we've tried many different things, but we still don't know ourselves what's scalable and commercially viable. So anyway, I think I'm being asked to wrap up, so I want to make sure that we leave a little bit of time. So we're here for Mission 300, right? This big initiative, productive use is part of it. I'd like to ask you both what you'd like to see from Mission 300 to help your business or investments perform the way that you'd like them to.
Yes, let me start and then Matthias can give the final touch to it. I think there are two themes that I think are very critical and fit very well into this whole event. Yeah, one is time. Yeah, we spend too much time deliberating over how we do things and not enough time trying to get to solutions. So we need to shorten that 10 years to a much smaller time horizon. And the other thing is we need to grow markets. And we need to grow markets by allowing businesses like Matthias to expand, whether it's from Ghana to Nigeria or across the continent, in a much more seamless way, so that the addressable market gets bigger, the opportunity gets bigger, and capital is more excited about where the journey could end.
Right. For me, I think Mission 300 should also prioritize collaborating with younger organizations, because usually what we usually see is most of these initiatives work with really large organizations, and it doesn't really give younger organizations that kind of experience as well. So when we go to investors like Clems, they always want to say, okay, what previous experience do you have, or how does your book look like? We do not really need very large capital, but at least if we are also plugged into a certain portion of implementing certain projects, it gives us that experience and that credibility to be able to reach out to more people for them to understand that what we are doing actually works to some extent, and then they're able to sort of give us that support. So plugging in younger organizations in this initiative is something that I think it should be a great game changer, so that investors like Clems will be able to support.
Okay, listen up, Mission 300. Matthias needs your support, so let's figure that out. Thank you both for an excellent conversation. Quick, short and sweet, as they say. Thanks so much.
Right.
Yeah, right on time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Un grand merci à nos...
A big thank you to our panelists and the moderator for the quality of their interventions. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we said that we will have successive panels. We have a lot to say this afternoon.